All right, let's kick it off. Okay, Nerdio Manager for WVD, the Community Edition. It's it's about time, I should say. So thank you everyone for tuning in, for joining tonight. It's your spare time, so really appreciate it. Good evening, I said just a couple of minutes ago, but good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are joining from, of course. So Manager for WVD, the Community Edition, that's what we are going to talk about primarily tonight. Let's have a look at the agenda. Excuse me. So I'd like to start out with some feedback that I got after our first session just over a month ago when we launched the Nerdio Tech Insider program. So very valuable, very helpful, and just to show what I've did with that as well to you guys. Of course, Nerdio Manager for for WVD Community Edition. What is it all about? So how to get it, how to use it, what it's meant for. Some of the limitations that might apply, and so on and so forth. That's of course the main topic of this evening. I'd like to go over its architecture, so how it's deployed, and so on and so forth. And I'd like to show you guys that as well. What to be aware of? Manager for WVD is built out of a couple of platform as a service services, so meaning native Azure technology. That's also why it's so flexible, powerful, and so on. And that's of course what we would like to show you guys as well in your home lab environment. So that's why we left that part the same, but I'm going to give you a couple of tricks and tips on that matter as well going forward. That's also sort of what to be aware of. So helpful resources, the tips and tricks I just mentioned, a couple of prerequisites which are handy to take over or to go over just to make sure you have a smooth installation of Manager for WVD. Talk a bit about support, a couple of next steps, and of course Q&A, which I'll get back to in just 1 or 2 minutes as well. So a demo, like I mentioned, so all of this I'd like to show you that sort of from a high level perspective as well. And just so you know, Manager for WVD, the Community Edition, will be part of the upcoming new version of the paid for edition, you could say. So as of version 2.5.0, you will be able to select the Manager for WVD version basically. So that's 2110. I think that might turn into 2110. So tomorrow afternoon, it could be tonight. When it will be released. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'll check once the presentation is done. But I'll be coming out with a sort of an announcement blog post tomorrow as well, so perhaps keep an eye on that also. That also means that if you are now in a trial version, using that within your own personal Azure lab, for example, just keep using it. And if you then upgrade in 1 or 2 days to version 2.5.0, you will be able to select the Community Edition just as easy. All right, some feedback which I got from the last session. So not being able to leave a comment or ask questions. I thought that was possible using Team Live events, but I was wrong, and I thought you would be able to use the chat function and so on and so forth. But now I've enabled live event Q&A as part of Team Live's live events. So you should see that icon being available at the top right on your own screen, and there you should be able to leave comments, ask questions, and so on. No recording. Well, there was a recording, but the audio was really horrible. So, it wasn't good enough to share with the audience, but hopefully I've taken care of that as well. I'm now using this mic, which I'm talking through at this time. So hopefully that will help now during the live event, but also once, the recording has been done. So this is actually something I hear a lot. So talk a bit slower. I am going to try that. No guarantees, of course. When I get excited about certain things, it's easy for me to forget all about this bullet basically and just ramble on, if you will. Fortunately, most of the people also tell me it might have gone fast, but it's it's still understandable. It's clear and so on and so forth. So that's then good to know. So hopefully we can get somewhere in between tonight. We got some feedback on the session itself. So from the meetup page, if you joined and you joined through the meetup page in this session, it will ask you to provide some feedback, perhaps leave a comment as well. So we actually had 4.5 stars on those 8 votes, but half a star doesn't look as pretty as 5 stars. I thought I'd just tell you guys that. Right, on to the good stuff. So I think in total we will be about 20 minutes, 22, 24, 25, depending on some questions you guys might have afterwards or during the event. So let's hop on to what Nerdio Manager for WVD, the Community Edition, is all about. I'm also going to make this presentation available to you guys, of course. I think I'll make it part of the blog post tomorrow. Not all the slides, but at least all of the good links and some of the main information. And at the end of this presentation, I also have a slide prepared with all of the useful links, which I'm going to reference throughout this presentation tonight as well. So that might be helpful. And of course, this knowledge base article is on there also, which is already live, by the way. So first and foremost, how and where to get it. Nerdio Manager for WVD and the Community Edition both are only available through the Azure Marketplace. So that's the easiest way to get it, and that's also the only way to get it. Pretty straightforward. That's what I'm going to show you in the demo as well, but it's actually too easy. Just search for Nerdio within the Azure portal, select Manager for WVD, fill in a couple of fields, and so on and so forth. It's extremely easy to get set up. So the purpose of the Community Edition, and this is an important one, so it's meant for personal, private Azure lab purposes. So no lab environments for companies. That's what the POCs for. So the trial licenses that we have, and a couple of other variants as well. But this one is purely meant for personal use, for community use. So to get WVD up and running and manage it through Manager for WVD within your own personal environment, for example. Save a bit of money, save a bit on resources, make it a bit easier, perhaps just to find out something about the product because you've heard a bit of stuff about it here and there, and now find out for yourself what it is about. So that's the main thought behind using the Community Edition of Manager for WVD. 25 users, that will be the maximum that you are allowed to use within your Community Edition environment, so within your own personal lab. So we thought about 10, 15, 25, it doesn't really matter, and 25 should be more than enough to get going and keep it going within your own personal space. Now, with regards to resources, we had a couple of thoughts about that as well. First, we thought, well, maybe we can, for example, limit the number of vCPUs that can get provisioned using Manager for WVD, for example. Or perhaps limit resources once they get above a certain amount of vCPUs or above a certain amount of maximum users, in this case 25, or anything to that extent. But we decided, we want you to be able to experience the full power of the product as well, so it's now unlimited. So if you would like to provision 50 types of machines, go right ahead. 50, 100, 10, 5, it doesn't really matter. You can go any way you would like. Of course, do keep an eye on the underlying costs, and I'll get to that in just a couple of minutes again, because all of the resources that you provision using Manager for WVD Community Edition are still for your own cost, or at least they will be built on your own private Azure tenant, or your subscription, I should say. Okay, the features. A very important one as well. So like I just mentioned, we thought about perhaps limiting certain features once you get above a certain level of vCPUs users, whatever the case may be. But here again, we decided to, to give you full control, excuse me. So that also means that you will be able to use the full feature set, including MSIX app attach, all of the auto scaling stuff for personal use as well. Not a problem. So that means that almost that every feature that we have released since Manager for WVD came out is now also part of the Community Edition as well. And of course, everything that comes after this, so as of version 2.5.0 and upwards, will be part of that also. So pretty cool to have that in your lab also. So this is how it will work to enable it. So, and again, I'll show you this, well, not this specific part, but the way to how to get started in just a couple of minutes. But once you have Manager for WVD Community Edition installed and you are able to log into the graphical user interface, this is what you'll see at the top. And of course, the green arrow indicates the addition of Community Edition, which you will then be able to select as well. And that's basically all you need to do. The rest is taken care of under the hood. And that's what we, well, I wouldn't say keep an eye on, but that's something that we monitor just like normal use as well. So once you have chosen Community Edition, it might take a couple of hours, perhaps half a day. This needs to be processed, but in the end, once you look up the edition that you are currently running within your lab environment, it should say Edition Community. So that's how this part would work. But before you get to this, there are a couple of steps to take, of course, but we'll get to that. So that means that as of today, with regards to Nerdio Manager for WVD, we now have the trial license, which is meant for POC purposes, and then afterwards perhaps into production, which means you need to subscribe, which for billing purposes and so on and so forth. But that's how you get from a POC to a production environment, basically. And if you need to rebuild it because you weren't, for example, attached to or deployed in the proper zone, not the proper networks or anything like that, that's not a problem. Just give us a call, give us a shout, and we'll take care of that. But we're talking about the Community Edition today, so let's not drift. And of course, this has now been added as of today, tomorrow, unlimited use in your private Azure labs. So pretty cool announcement. So this is what it looks like from a high-level architectural perspective. In the middle, you see, of course, the Azure Marketplace. Like I mentioned, that's the only way to get it. Now, it is deployed within your own tenant or within the subscription within your tenant, your Azure tenant. And you can see here that it is built out of various platform as a service services. At least that's what these are. So no traditional or legacy VMs, whatever you would like to call it, no VMs that we manage for you or anything like that. So no native Azure technology. And this also means, or this is the main reason why it is so scalable, flexible, powerful, and so on and so forth. And not just from a usage perspective or management perspective, but also from a development perspective. And that's why we can come out with, you know, multiple new editions, sometimes even twice a month, but at least once a month for sure, like we will do this week. Now, what to be aware of, that also applies to those mentioned platform as a service services, because you know they run on Azure and they are of course not for free. So there are some costs associated with that. And I think it's also good to mention a couple of the prerequisites that you need to have a look at. Well, you don't need to, of course, but it just helps to smoothen the installation of Manager for WVD. Now, both the associated costs and the prerequisites and a whole bunch of other stuff we are able to help with you know, tips, tricks, direct answers to your questions, and so on and so forth. Now, this is sort of the main page where you need to go if you have any questions around Nerdio Manager for WVD, the Community Edition or the paid for it version. So basically, every question that we get more than once, we try to write a KB article of, which you can then find here. But it also has the quick start guide. Now, the quick start guide is important for multiple reasons. So for one, it helps you with the prerequisites. So this will take you just a couple of minutes to go over. And in 90% of all cases, this has all been taken care of, or at least it's easy to take care of or to get done. But again, this helps you with smoothing the installation process. It also holds a bunch of information about the resources being deployed, together with the service principles, the permissions, their functions, and so on and so forth. So from a security perspective, if you're wondering about this, it's all been documented very thoroughly. And there are more KB articles like this or about this type of information to be found on the Zendesk page dedicated to Manager for WVD also. Including the video tutorials, which I would recommend having a look at as well. Now, this is one of the KB articles, and this has to do with the underlying platform as a service services. And as you can see here, the app service, or I should say the app service plan together with the app service or as part of the app service, and the SQL database accommodate for the biggest cost, or almost, well, I think 99% of the cost. So there are a couple of things you can do with that. And if you are not sure on how to do it, I'm going to show you in just a couple of minutes, so you can always watch back the recording. And otherwise, make sure just to ask questions about this in our Slack channel, which I'll get to near the end. But just know that this has all been documented as well. Like I mentioned, helpful resources. Definitely consider joining the Slack channel as well. We have a separate channel for the Community Edition, of course, and a couple of support and frequently asked questions sections on there as well. Though most of this support related material will probably send you back over to the Zendesk page, or at least one of the articles on there, but it's easy to get to in both ways. So time for a quick demo. Let me hop over to my Azure pane. So let's start at the beginning. So if you just search for Nerdio, you'll see Manager for WVD pop up almost right away. Just click it. Of course, you can go through some of the material here as well if that's something you would like to do at this time. Otherwise, just click Create. And basically all you need to do is fill in a couple of fields. So here we would need a resource group that needs to be empty, but that's just for the installation. And then afterwards, you will be able to add in as many resource groups and link networks and so on and so forth as you would like. So just for the installation, which also makes it flexible if you want to get rid of it, basically. So you just have to delete the resource group and you're done with the Manager for WVD, the Community Edition. Of course, the region you would like to install to, and then this is the account we need for the installation. So you need to be an owner of the subscription that you are deploying Manager for WVD into. And here we also ask you to disable conditional access and to disable multi-factor authentication. And that's also why this is turned to yes, because if you do that, then almost the full installation can be automated. If you do not want, for whatever reason, to disable MFA, conditional access or anything like that, then you can set this to no, and you can do this through PowerShell as well. You can download one of the scripts, execute it locally, and then of course you will be challenged for MFA through your phone, for example, a couple of times during the installation, but the end result will exactly be the same. Click next, final steps, validate, review and create, and that's basically how you get started with the installation of Nerdio Manager for WVD and the Community Edition as well, because once the installation has been done, like I showed you a couple of slides back, you will be able to select Community Edition from the solution itself. Now let me hop over to Home and Resource Groups, because I mentioned some of the underlying Platform as a Service services. So I have it deployed in Nerdio. So here you can see the automation account, but also the SQL database, the app service and the app service plan that goes with it. Now what would be handy to do, especially within your lab environments, click the plan, and then you will be able to the left to scale up. But that also means that you basically can adjust your pricing tier. So this is what is selected by default, and you can see the pricing and the specs and so on and so forth. And you can work with B2, B1, D1 and F1 as well, of course. Give it a try to see if that works. Just remember the limited amount of time you have, minutes and days. But also it might happen that the graphical user interface of Manager for WVD might become a bit sluggish, if you will, a bit slow. And if that's the case, you might need to upgrade just 1 or 2 notches. But this can definitely help you to bring costs down quite a bit. And it's just select apply, and that's basically all you need to do. And you can do that while the information I was about to say, while the environment is running. So back to the resource group. So this is the same resource group again. Here you can see the SQL database as part of the SQL Platform as a Service services as well. And as you can see here, you can see the pricing tier. It's set to standard S1. And this can be turned down a notch, a couple of notches as well. You can see the estimated pricing. And if I select basic, you see what happens. It becomes a lot cheaper as well. Now, we purposely chose to do it this way because, like I mentioned in the beginning as well, this gives you the full power and full capabilities of Manager for WVD as part of the Community Edition, just as for the paid for version. And otherwise, it would be very hard, near to impossible, to do this through a local installer or anything like that. And of course, a lot of work to get that created also. But this should work just fine. All right. So that's what I wanted to show you with regards to how to get started. Just search for Nerdio Manager for WVD and think about the app service plan and the database that comes with it that you can scale down as well. So let me hop over back to the presentation. Right, a couple of things as part of next steps. So we had the launch, and now I want to get started using Nerdio Manager for WVD, the Community Edition. So I'm thinking about organizing multiple, smaller meetups, or smaller. They don't have to be small, of course, but just 30, 45-minute tops, and go over certain topics in more detail. So first, the installation process, then have a deep dive into auto-scaling, the image management stuff, and all the capabilities we offer there as part of the Community Edition as well. And as you'll see, the image management is really fun to work with also. I mentioned this during the last event also, the WVD quiz, so start studying. This is something we are still working on. This will probably happen somewhere in Q1 of 2021. That's the expectation at this point. Nerdio partner sessions, also quite exciting. We are working on multiple. So, and again, here the same rules apply as I mentioned through with the launch of the program. No sales, no marketing. It needs to be technical or deep technical even. And our audience needs to potentially be able to learn something about what the session is about, and not where to buy it and how much money it will cost them. Of course, if you haven't done so already, join our Meetup page and Slack channel. And that's basically what I wanted to share with you guys tonight. So I keep it short, relatively short, but to the point. You should know by now what Manager for WVD, the Community Edition, is all about. You will be able to get it as of, or enable it as of, I think tomorrow it will be. I'll check in a minute. Just know you can go to the marketplace, install Manager for WVD within your own personal Azure Lab environments, even though the Community Edition hasn't come out yet, because you will be able to select it as of tomorrow or the day after from within your current trial version as well. So if you install it now, it will just work if you upgrade to version 2.5.0. So these are the reference links I was mentioning at the beginning of the presentation. These will be part of the slide deck, of course, or are part of the slide deck. So helpful. I'm now going to hop over to see if there are any questions in the Q&A and to see if that worked at all. So, from my side, thank you very much. I hope you found it useful. You are, curious about it, want to give it a try, and so on and so forth. And perhaps also think about joining some of the upcoming webinars around, the training series and so on. So again, thank you very much for attending. And I'll just stop sharing my screen in just a minute and see if there are any questions. All right, let's see. How are the users counted? I have an Azure AD in my demo environment with more than 1,500 test users, but only 7 or 8 of them have an Office 365 license. The others are unlicensed. Well, you can choose between concurrent licensing and named licensing. So a named license would be any user which is assigned to one or multiple host pools, and it doesn't matter if it's 25 host pools or just one, it will still be counted as just one named license. But the most common one is concurrent licensing, and that means every user that is actually connected up to WVD using Manager for WVD at any time. So hopefully that will answer the question. So you can have 1,500 users assigned to a host pool, for example. But again, it's for 25 users, like I mentioned. So probably this question was asked a little before that became clear, or I could have guessed, but or that would be my guess. But hopefully this will answer the question, because this applies what I just mentioned to 25 licenses as well, of course. If they are concurrent, not a problem. Let me see, are split tenant installations supported? My VM and Session Origin Tenant A, the AD. Right. So Active Directory with WVD users and host pools are in Tenant B with the trial license of Azure, and no paid for services are created. So yeah, that is actually supported. You can do split tenant installations. You can add in multiple tenants, but always one tenant will be used for authentication authorization purposes. So your primary Azure AD tenant, your Active Directory, or Azure Active Directory, I should say. And you can use the other tenants for VM purposes, like you mentioned, Robert, in the question also. So yeah, that's possible. And also you can have or add multiple subscriptions to a single tenant. That is also supported. Is it possible to post the Slack invite in the chat, Brian? All right, are we now good to talk about this in public? Definitely, yes, please do. Right. Missed the first few minutes. Is there missing compared to a paid for version? So is there or are there features missing compared to the paid for version? Well, actually, that answer is no, there are not. So it is limited with regards to being able to only use it in your Azure private lab environment and the 25 user limit, which is something which will be monitored as well. But other than that, no limits. So hopefully that answers that question as well. Yeah, no more questions, I think. So, all right. So if you guys have no more questions, hopefully you enjoyed the show. Thank you for joining. And I'll keep it at that and at this, and give you back some of your time then, and hopefully see you online again soon. Bye bye for now.